The meditative state. Your meditation should never end, said Daji. His word punctured a long silence. Of course, this does not mean that you never give up again. You never get up again, he continued. You cannot remain seated in meditation all day, but you can remain in a meditative state throughout all your activities. Your life itself becomes a meditation, you see, a dynamic and an ongoing one. Please underline that. When the meditation is continuous, it becomes dynamic and ongoing. It is a meditation with open eyes. You are not seated in meditation, but you are meditating. In India, we have a concept called Brahman. Traditionally, Brahman is akin to God. It is thought to be ultimate reality, the supreme being, or whatever you may call it. Yet, if we examine the etymology roots, we uncover a further different story. Brahman is derived from two Sanskrit roots, Bruha, Man. Bruha means expansion, and Man means thinking or contemplation. So, underline Bruha means expansion, Man means contemplation. So, Brahman literally means that which expands and contemplates. Let's step back for a moment. Do you remember how I described consciousness as a big circle? Yes, I said. The center of the circle represents the deepest core of our own being, and the circumference stands for our external awareness. Again, he is repeating. So now two places he is talked about the consciousness and the awareness, the relationship between the two, and the source. So if you draw a circle, the center is the source, the field of that circle is the consciousness, the periphery of that circle is the awareness. A time comes when the consciousness expands in both directions simultaneously towards the center and towards the circumference. This is Brahman in the true sense. It is expansion, but it's also thinking because the mind which thinks exists within the consciousness. Now, please underline. Many of the people ask, where is the mind? Mind is within the realm of the consciousness. So the subconscious mind is also within the realm of the consciousness only. The superconsciousness is also within the realm of the superconscious mind is also within the realm of the consciousness only. So entire three things. When we say the word consciousness, it includes subconsciousness, consciousness, and the superconscious mind, all the three. So most people think Brahman to be something other than what it really is, I said. Yes, said Raji. We have applied our human understanding to something that is beyond understanding. You see, one of the reasons that Socrates was executed was that he proclaimed gods to be human creations. He observed that the gods, as they were presented, had human characters. Therefore, he concluded that they were mere human projections. While that was going on in Greece, the same thing was happening in India. It still is, in fact, not just in India. It's a peculiar facet of human nature that we assign human qualities to everything, including God. You see, the Sanskrit word for the individual being is Atman. Atman literally means that which moves and think. Atman can be split into Ataha, A-T-H, Ataha plus Man. Ataha means movement, Man means thinking. So you can see that the definition of an individual is very close to the ancients' definition of God. The only distinction being that one expands while the other merely moves. Why are they so similar? The reason is that people thought God must be like us, but greater. If the individual being is something that moves, then God being greater, he should expand. For expansion is greater than mere movement. So they took the ultimate and named it as Brahman according to their human understanding. So if you read many of the Upanishads, they talk about Brahman as being the highest goal of human life. Okay. So some Upanishads talk about Atman as being the goal of human life. Some Upanishads talk about the Brahman. Very into only two places, the concept of Bhuma or the center is there as the concept of the center. No, concept as the goal of human life. So there are three. Atman, there are majority of the Upanishads which talk about Atman as the goal. Then you have quite a few Upanishads which talk about Brahman as the goal. And third one is Bhuma. Only two Upanishads talk about Bhuma as the goal. In reality, Brahman is not ultimate. Please underline this. So this is a question for you in the exam. Not only underline it, please remember it. After stopping your yawning, because when you are yawning, the energy is going out. Now this has to go in. It is that state in which the consciousness contemplates and expands. The ultimate is far beyond this. The ultimate is changeless, so it cannot expand, nor contract, nor contemplate. Please underline. Why Brahman is not the highest? Anything that expands or contracts or contemplates cannot be the highest. Because the reality of the highest has none of these characters. So, in the meditative state, our consciousness exhibits the qualities of the Brahman, but it is not the ultimate state. Correct, said Darji. We have to go beyond Brahman, and there's a term for that too, which is called as Parabrahman, which means beyond Brahman. Para means that which gives rise to the next thing. So anything when you say para, when you add the word para, that means you are going to something which is higher than the other talked about. Para is always added to something. So Parashakti, Parashiva, Parabrahman. So when you add the word para, it just means you are going to something higher than the next one. So if you say Parashiva, Shiva is a lower level of manifestation. Parashiva is slightly higher. Something like that. So when you add para, this is the meaning. So Brahman is derived from Parabrahman, but it is not the end. The meditative state keeps on evolving, you see, it grows finer and subtler until it dissolves into the ultimate state. Underline that. The meditation state is always evolving, grows finer and subtler. So if somebody were to ask you what is the thing that will happen in every session of meditation, it is just that your consciousness becomes finer and subtler. That is happening in every session of meditation. When you do meditation, when you take a sitting, when you attend satsang, this is one fundamental thing that is happening throughout. Keep that in mind. Till when? Till it dissolves into the ultimate state. But it cannot evolve unless we create it in the first place. Daji passed in reflection. I don't think anybody will be truly satisfied with meditation until the effect becomes permanent. So, what's the point of having only temporary effects? So, we want something more long term, right? That's why when we get the money, we only can use the money temporarily, but we want to convert that money into something more permanent asset. So this tendency to convert the temporary into something long term or permanent is always embedded in a human psyche. Of course, what use is profound meditation if it does not transform your daily experience? Please underline this. What use is profound meditation? You might have the most wonderful of the meditation, but if it's not going to change your experience of real life, then it has not done its job. Otherwise, meditation is like drawing water from a well using a leaky bucket. You are unable to retain it and carry it into your life. So you keep drawing the water from the leaky bucket. By the time you pull it up, the water is gone. Again, you put the leaky bucket back into the well. Again, you draw the water. Again, by the time it comes out, it's gone. Then you can't even get the water for your own life. What's the point of doing it then? The repeated exercise, right? So we don't want to be a leaky bucket. We want to be a bucket which can actually hold the water and get the water and make use of the water in real life. That's how we should be. How do you make the effects of the meditation carry over or permanent? He said. Now he's talking about the AEIOU. The first step is to meditate. He said, meditation is the mother of meditative state. Underline this. This is again examination question. Meditation is the mother of meditative state. So if I were to set the question paper, to make you confused, I'll ask what is the father of meditative state? And answer is indicated by Gopal Krishna. What is this question? It is not in the book. So it's out of syllabus. So Gopal Krishna gave an instantaneous answer. But unfortunately, you cannot write this in the examination. Right? You can draw a picture of somebody scratching their head and say that is the answer. Eh, But see, remember one thing. Don't you think it's logical to think when you talk about mother, there should be some father, no? And then there should be child also. The thing is, meditation is the mother. You are the father. The abhyas is the father. And the baby is the meditative state. That is what it is. So the meditation is the mother. Who is the one who is meditating there? That is the father. And the baby is the meditative state that you are getting. Now, don't tell me that we have come to a stage, sir, without any marriage, the mother can actually have a baby. Now we have come to that stage, no? So who knows what is going to happen going forward? Now people have started storing their sperms, eggs, everything in the lab, saying that it's going to come in handy later on. And we know now the artificial insemination, right? So you can just go to one library of sperm and say, select this sperm. I want this father from this particular sperm. So you take one of those and then you just fertilize the egg and then implant it. That can be done, no? Why not? Possible, realm of possibility. The people are all storing, people are storing umbilical cord blood. The umbilical cord blood has lot of stem cells which can multiply and differentiate into any cell in the body. So people are storing the umbilical cord blood so that eventually, suppose if they get cancer, say 30, 40 years down the line, and they require stem cells, then rather than look for stem cells from other people, they can actually get the stem cells from their own umbilical cord blood which is stored for 40 years. So all fanciful ideas are actually getting implemented. And then just now our Bharat was saying that there is no current or power. And what happens to all these things stored? 2 days current gone means everything gone, right? See, for that to survive, you need to have that incubation, no? It should be stored in appropriate conditions, storage conditions. And that requires power. When the power is gone, then those things will just not survive. But anyway, see, we can have all these fanciful notions, but how practical it is, we don't know, right? So Ganeshan wanted to ask something. When I used the word all these possibilities, now suddenly he got interested. So immediately he came forward. I want to ask something. We are not able to hear you. You are unmuted, but we are not able to hear. You are like the old Doordarshan box. Okay. If you see, you cannot hear. If you hear, you cannot see. That is how it used to be. The old Doordarshan television. The first time when television came to India. And always we used to keep adjusting the band. There was a band that we need to turn in a knob. You remember that? So we used to keep adjusting it all the time. And then sometimes out of frustration, when the TV wouldn't play, no, we had learned one thing. In everything in India, you just tap on it. You give a slap and then it starts playing.
And now you are able to hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So when we are talking about that, the various tests, I remembered about the DNA. Like, we each of us carry one individual different DNA. Like normally, in our this thing, we call it as Bharatwaja Gotra. So I belongs to Maharshi of Bharatwaja, right? So when we practice all this, first thing is I want to know what is DNA. And when we practice meditation and when we go nearing to the Brahman or something, do we change the DNA? Is that possible?
The DNA becomes irrelevant after some period of time. Now, what is the function of the DNA? The function of the DNA is to store all the genes. So the chromosomes which are there have all the genes. When we meditate, we actually change the genes. What do you mean by changing the genes? We actually turn on and turn off some of the genes because of meditation. So when we get our DNA, now see, all of us have the same number of DNA. 23 pairs. All of us have the same, right? But in females, it is XX. The last one is XX. And in males, it is XY chromosome. So it is the Y element which determines the change or the gender. If the Y element is not activated, then all the children born will be females only. So when the Y chromosome is activated, then there is a possibility of that being born as a male. So there is hardly very little difference between these two, except that the Y chromosome turns on. How does the genes function in our body? We get a set of genes from our parents. Depending on our samskaras, we actually turn some of the genes on and keep some of the genes off. So it's about turning on or off of the genes. That is what determines whether the genes that we have inherited actually plays a part in your life or not. Now you might buy say 100 set of clothes, but if you are wearing only about 10, 20, the rest of the things are there, but they don't actually play any part in your life. They are there in the cupboard, that's all. Likewise, you might get n number of genes through the parents. What we do is that we activate certain amount of genes and make utilization of that. Certainly looked at from this particular perspective, the genes do change. So they had done this experiment. I keep repeating this experiment. They had done this experiment with mindfulness meditation. They just made people do mindfulness meditation for 15 minutes every day for 3 months. So they took a blood sample and then analyzed the DNA. And then they took another blood sample after 3 months and analyzed the DNA. What they saw within 3 months is that within 3 months, 15% of the expression of the gene has changed. And mindfulness meditation is just one thing. You just close your eyes and not pay attention to the thoughts that come in the mind. That's all that you do, mainly. So you don't even go towards the heart. There is no pranahuti, there is no cleaning, nothing of that kind. Without any of these things, the most basic of the possibility, which is not to pay attention to the thoughts that is coming in the mind, that itself changes the expression of the gene by 15%. Now just imagine how much the genes will change as we grow in meditation with all the tools that we have got. Definitely, rather than saying that the DNA is changed, what you can say is that the expression of the genes in the DNA is changed. And over a period of time, the DNA, the original DNA that you got from your parents, gradually becomes less and less relevant. See, you have developed all the personality, so-called personality. What is this so-called personality? Personality is nothing but expressions of our samskaras. Through what? Through the genes. That is what it is. So when we actually work on the samskaras and we change the qualities that we have or the personal characters that we have got, each of these personal characters becomes less and less relevant. As you go towards the center, the only quality that you actually stabilize in is love. All other qualities that we have got as far as the functioning of our system in this world is concerned, it becomes less and less relevant, less and less important. And then ultimately we will realize that all qualities that we've got is nothing but a derivation of love only in different formats. So the love has to come down and then it has to kind of modify itself into different qualities and then that has to manifest as personality. That's what it is. So what we do is as we go towards the subtler aspect of the love, the grosser aspect of the love which are now manifesting as qualities or characters, they all kind of melt away. Okay. For example, anger. What is anger? Anger is nothing but modified aspect of love only. In a way, it's a negative aspect of love. Every quality that you can take is nothing but a modification of love. In psychiatry also, in a particular field called as psychotherapy, we talk about the same thing, that love is the basis of everything. In fact, if you read to the depth, the psychotherapy, and you read the depth of Upanishad, talking about the self, they are very similar to a certain extent. Okay, so two things happen. The expression of the genes change as we meditate. Secondly, the genes that we have inherited or the DNA that we have inherited from our ancestors, they become less and less relevant in our life. They become irrelevant to a large extent. Only some qualities are allowed to stay that you have inherited. Remember, we have two sources in which we can inherit, we can get things. One is that we can get from our parents, other one is that we can actually carry from our past life. So these are the two sources from which we can get anything, any quality that we have in this life, right? So what happens is only those qualities which are relevant and necessary for your spiritual journey is kept intact by the Guru. Rest of the qualities which is going to impede your journey is kind of cleaned off by the Guru. They are modified and cleaned off. Okay. If you read 1944 Whispers, then Lalaji writes about Babuji's traits. Which of the traits he got from his own past life, which of the traits he got inherited from his parents. So that's very interesting. And all of us, whatever we read in 44 Whispers applies to all of us. It's like a general commentary that Lalaji gives, although in the context of Babuji, that's all. But it applies to all of us. So we inherit some qualities from the parents, we inherit some qualities from our own past life, and it's a mixture. Okay. See, you cannot eat only rice. Now you can eat only rasam. It's always a mixture, right? So you mix rice and rasam and then eat it. That's what life is. Okay. So an answer to your question is yes, we do change the expression of the genes in the DNA. And in our system, though, definitely, because it works much more powerfully than what other systems can do. Okay. So don't think that the genes that you have inherited are something we are helpless in front of. No. In this meditation, you go beyond it. You can work on it, you can modify it. Okay? Because the expressions of the genes are determined by the samskaras. It is the samskaras which actually determine which of the genes in the DNA should be turned on, which should be turned off, when they should be turned on. Simple example, at this age, younger age, the gene of the hair growth is turned on. As you grow older, the gene of the hair loss is turned on. So you start losing hairs. Then that's also a gene only. Right? So there are many things which happen with age where there is a natural control. It kind of just gets turned on by nature itself. We don't need to do anything. It just happens. No, the nature did not ask me, are you ready to lose your hairs? I didn't give consent. But it just happened. Like nature does not ask Bharat or Gopal Krishna, are you happy to have more hairs? It just happens. Right? So there are certain genes which are turned on and off by nature itself. Over and above that, we also have that ability. As we grow in spirituality, we get that ability also to work in tune with nature.
Mm.
So we will not turn against nature and turn on certain genes which the nature wants to be turned off. Of course, we can artificially manipulate it. We will not change at the gene level. What we will do is, I'll get a hair transplant done. In that way, I'm to a certain extent modifying. Even though the gene of hair loss is turned on, I will actually get the hair transplant done and I might have some hairs. Right? So that modification at the human level is possible, but that is not going to have an impact on the genes. The genes will stay as it is. The genes per se will not allow new hairs to grow. But the genes will not interfere with this particular hair transplant because the hair transplant is done at the superficial level. It has no impact on the gene. So you are not turning on the gene again. The gene is in the same condition as it's supposed to be by nature, but you are artificially modifying at the surface. It's like what do you say, putting makeup to Rajinikanth or Ambrish, right? See, there are a lot of people When you look at them in the cinema, they appear so different from what they are really. Now, when you see them in real, you start wondering, is this the real person that we see on the screen, right? So you people can actually, there is so much skill in makeup now that you can actually convert a person from one appearance to another appearance, right? So that is what it is. So how do we make the effects of meditation carry over? The first step is to meditate. Meditation is the mother of meditative state. Without a mother, there is no baby, and without the act of meditation, there is no meditative state. We achieve permanency in meditation through repeated meditations. With daily meditation, you steadily build up that meditative condition, brick by brick, meditation by meditation, you build it. If you don't meditate frequently, that condition starts to wane. And then you have to create it all over again, I said. Yes, said Daji. It's like a plant that requires daily water and sunshine. If you neglect it, you will have to keep resuscitating it. How will it flourish? But it is not enough to meditate. You must also bring that meditative consciousness into your wakeful awareness. Now underline this. You have to bring the meditative consciousness into the wakeful awareness. This depends on the way in which we conduct ourselves in the minutes that immediately follow meditation. So the clue is how do you conduct yourself after the meditation? So if you do meditation and immediately get up and start involving in the worldly activities, you have lost that meditative state, the condition that you got at the end of meditation. A fresh meditative state is like a wet cement. It needs some time to settle before you carry it into your daily life. If you just jump out of your chair the very instant meditation ends, that meditative state of consciousness becomes fractured. This is akin to throwing it away. It's like working hard for a paycheck and then tossing it out into the garbage. If you're going to do that, then why meditate at all? So, what do you recommend? I asked. After meditation, open your eyes very gently, he said. Then remain in meditation for a few minutes more, but with half open eyes. This is very important. In these few minutes, you are not thinking about what you have to do today. You do not check the messages on your phone. You are still meditating, and with slightly open eyes. You stay like this for a few minutes until you feel totally present in your surroundings. So the first two lines of this is important. Open your eyes gently, but remain in meditation for a few minutes more with your half eyes open. Even then, move slowly at first. Remain still, remain meditative. Anything jarring should be completely avoided. You have to be like a deep sea diver, slowly ascending from the watery depths. Nothing can be rest. You should even refrain from drinking water immediately after meditation. So remember that example. Coming from the depths of the ocean, the deep sea diver gradually comes up. If they come up very fast, no, they develop pulmonary edema. The water fills up, air embolism. So they have blockages in the blood vessels because the air rushes in to the blood vessels. So it blocks the flow of energy, the flow of blood. So many people, when they are brought out to the surface from the deep sea, they suffer air embolism and many people die. This is one of the commonest complications. So I'm just giving you hints because when you go for scuba diving and all, people have the craze now. They want to go and dive from something or the other. They want to dive either from the top of the mountain or they want to dive into the depth of the ocean. So either way, you should be very slow in your descent and ascent. Okay, especially when you go depth into the water and then you come back, there is a complication of air embolism. Air embolism is the air rather than being in the air form, it forms like a uh, vacuole of air and it starts blocking the flow of blood. It's called as air embolism. Okay, we can also have fat embolism. When people fracture the hip bone, there is a fat embolism because the hip has a lot of fat. So that gets released into the bloodstream. So they can suffer fat embolism. So the fat now as a globule starts blocking the flow of the blood. So remember these two words, air embolism and fat embolism. Embolism is something which is not to be supposed to be there in the blood, but it's there in other parts of the body. Now manifests in the blood and then starts obstructing the flow of the blood. That is called as embolism. Something which moves from one part of the body to another part. Okay. Why I asked? You should not even drink water immediately after meditation. Why? I asked. Whenever a person is upset, their drink of water helps to calm them down, said Daji. This shows that water can change our inner condition. Now, that may be good when someone is upset, but after meditation, we want to preserve the condition that we have. We don't want to change it. So, we avoid drinking water for few minutes. Along these lines, if you have meditated the fan blowing on us, we should keep that fan on for some time. We shouldn't immediately switch it off. And it is if it was turned off during meditation, it should stay off. Until that meditative condition is secure, we should do nothing that could possibly disturb it. Those first few moments are critical. They determine the quality of your entire day. What happens in these few minutes that make them so important? Your meditative consciousness merges into your normal waking state. Please underline. Your meditative consciousness merges into the normal waking state. What is that you have in the waking state? You have your waking consciousness. Now in the meditation, you have developed the meditative consciousness. Now they both of them now come together. By spending just few minutes meditating with open eyes, your consciousness remains meditative as you adjust to the waking state. After a while, the two states coexist. So you are now in the waking state with waking consciousness. You are also now mindful of the meditative consciousness. Both will coexist together. You are inwardly absorbed in the meditative state, but you are perfectly alert to the surroundings. This is one aspect in converting the act of meditation into the state of meditativeness. So underline this. So how do you convert the act of meditation into a state of meditativeness or meditative state? So this will be a question for you in the exam. Okay. So coming up to 7:14, we can stop here and then probably we can finish it tomorrow morning. I think another 2-3 pages are there. We can finish tomorrow. And then from Monday we can do the cleaning chapter. Any questions?
Sorry, I initially I had that question. You mentioned that in the region of mind we have the consciousness, super consciousness, subconsciousness. That I didn't understand properly.
Consciousness contains the mind. It's not the
Okay, now,
mind containing the consciousness. Consciousness contains the mind.
okay, within that we have a super consciousness and subconsciousness.
So it's the consciousness which is split into three. Consciousness is one. But for the sake of our understanding and journey, we split the consciousness into three. The super consciousness, the conscious aware mind, the conscious aware state, or the consciousness, what to talk about, and the subconscious. So you have three. So for example, if there is one circle here, if I draw a line at the center of the circle, one will be above, one part of the circle will be above, one part of the circle will be below, and the line will be the third one. So the line is the conscious awareness. The line above is the superconscious. The space above is the superconsciousness. The space below is the subconsciousness. So consciousness is one. So same question was asked in the other meeting also with the candidates. But each of them is infinite. Subconscious is infinite in its own way. The conscious is infinite in its own way, and the superconsciousness is also infinite in its own way. Then the root of the superconsciousness is also infinite, and then the reality is also another infinite. We read about that. One infinity supporting the other infinity. Now, what are the different states of it? What when we talk about infinity, what is its difference? The difference is in the subtlety. So each one is infinite in its own level of subtlety. So you can have a unidimensional infinity, you can have a bidimensional infinity, you can have a tridimensional infinity, you can have a quadruple dimension of infinity, you can have infinite dimensions of infinity. So when we expand not in one dimension, we expand across dimensions. That is what we actually become in meditation. In spirituality, we expand across dimensions. We become wholesome. We become inclusive of every dimension. It's not infinity in one dimension only. Okay. So just ponder on these 2 points. It is there in the earlier part of the book, but we can discuss that tomorrow. I think tomorrow only 3-4 pages are there. We can probably discuss a bit more on this. Okay. So it's like, for example, just because we just spoke about the actors, cinema actors, the cinema actors need to be versatile. No, they cannot be restricted to one kind of a part relating to action movies, a part relating to bhakti movies, or a part relating to some other quality, emotional movie. A versatile actor is one who can actually enact any of these situations with ease. That actor is called as a versatile actor. So if an actor is just stuck to action movies or stuck to emotional movies, then you don't call that as actor as a wholesome actor. So we look for wholesomeness in acting also. Likewise, in meditation also, in spirituality also, we look for wholesomeness. Wholesomeness means what? Across different dimensions. Not only in one aspect, but multiple aspects. That's how we evolve. Okay? Evolution does not mean to just go round and round in one circle, in one level of infinity. That is not evolution. Evolution is across infinities. That's what your growth is. Okay?
Thank you, bro.
Number